When you're creating a pre-filled registration form, writing that substitute formula can get pretty tedious if you have many different columns of data that you want to pre-fill in your form. For example, my real-world registration form has got 35 different columns on my database that I use to pre-fill the form before I send it to families. And if I were to go and just try to type that length of a formula out, it's pretty much a given that I would make errors in the typing of it. So I would probably either type the column headings wrong or put in the wrong number of substitutes or parentheses, but in any case, it's highly likely that I would make a mistake. And so I've found this workaround to make it easier to write the formula and to minimize the chances of any errors. So to do this, I start with my spreadsheet, which has my database, and across the top of it, I have all of the different columns of information. So I am just going to highlight all of those column names, right-click and copy, and go to a blank spreadsheet, and in cell A1, I'm going to right-click, paste special, transpose. And that's going to copy all of those column headings down into one column. Now in column 2, you're going to want to reference where on your database that piece of information is located. And I've already done this, so I'm just going to copy mine in. But what you would need to do is you would need to go to your database and see, where do I have that particular piece of information? And for me, this first one is in column AJ. Now it's very important, if you created columns on your spreadsheet to deal with the issue of having spaces in your data, that you use that corrected column that has dealt with the spaces correctly. So be sure and reference the correct column that you want substituted here. And I should say that I'm doing this in Excel, but this works exactly the same way in Google Sheets if you're using Google Sheets. Now in the formula that we're going to write, we need to get some quotation marks. And I was not successful at getting this to work by just typing it into the formula. There's probably a way to make it work, but I just found that an easy workaround is just type a quotation mark in C and a quotation mark in D, and then when I go to E, I'm going to combine them all into the format that I need. So do that and then go to E1, and we're going to combine these. So we're going to type E, C1, you can either type it or just click on it, ampersand, A1, ampersand, D1, ampersand, quotation mark, comma, quotation mark, because we need to put a comma in there, ampersand, B1, ampersand, quotation mark, 2, close parenthesis, comma, quotation mark. And that's what it looks like. And that probably looks familiar from the last video. Now the reason I use the number 2 is because my data starts on line 2. My headers are on line 1, my data starts on line 2. If your data starts on a different line, you're going to want to use that line number. Now in F, type in substitute, open parenthesis. And then we're just going to highlight that and drag the icon down to copy it through the entire list of columns. Okay, now open Notepad. You can use a different text editor, but be sure to use a text editor and not a word processing program like Word. Word will tend to put spaces in there, and spaces are going to cause your link to break. So start out in a text editor and you'll solve that problem. And because we're going to do a formula, we're going to start it by typing in equal. And then we're going to come back over to our spreadsheet. We're going to highlight column F and copy and paste it into Notepad. And if you're wondering why I copied all those substitutes, well, you need a substitute for every piece of data that you're substituting. You need to type that in. And so this guarantees that I have the right number because I've matched it up on that previous spreadsheet. Now come in here and delete all of these line returns. And that should look familiar as the first part of the formula. What comes next in the formula is telling it where your pre-filled link is. Because remember, what you're doing is you're saying, go to that pre-filled link, but every time you come across this information, substitute this instead. And so you need to tell it where the pre-filled link is. Mine is located in column BI, row 2. So I type in BI2, comma. Now I'm going to come back over to my spreadsheet and highlight column E. And just like I did before, I'm going to copy and paste it into Notepad and remove all of those line returns. And you see I just deleted something incorrectly, so I just typed back in what it should have been. And there you go. Now, if you want to just use the great big long link, you just take off that last comma and you are good to go. But I actually don't like sending this big link out. I prefer to just send a little register link, something very short and sweet that the person just sees register and they can click on and it goes to this link. So to do that, come up after the equal and before the first substitute and type hyperlink, open parenthesis. Whoop, wasn't paying attention where I was typing. Up here, hyperlink, open parenthesis. And then come to the end of it and type in quotation mark, register, quotation mark, close parenthesis. And now I have a formula that will substitute 35 different pieces of information on my registration form and pre-fill it individually for all of my families. And all I need to do is just copy this formula, go paste it back on my spreadsheet in Google Sheets, in that where the substitute link is supposed to go, in that column, and then just copy it down through the whole column to populate all of the individual forms. And that's it. Hope that made it easier for you.